Okay, my name is Larry McGlynn, and you're listening to the award-winning Philadelphia Hall Monitor here on WPPM 106.5 in Philadelphia, on Comcast Channel 66, and streaming live at phillycam.org. You can find us on Twitter at Hall Monitor WPPM, on our website www.hallmonitor.org, or on Facebook at PHM WPPM. Tonight on the program, Vanessa Maria Graber will report on the Food Truck Association protest of legislation that would limit when and where food trucks can operate. Denise Clay-Murray will share with us her interview with the HOPE Consortium, and Lance Haver will report on SEPTA. Denise, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. We have a later week this week account. Oh, there are hearings today and Monday, but nothing tomorrow. No city council tomorrow. Nothing on Friday. Nothing on Monday. Hearings back on Tuesday. So a little bit of a break for Memorial Day weekend. So why don't we start right on it here and bring on Vanessa Maria Graber. Vanessa, how are you tonight?
Hello. Glad to be here, especially after a long election primary season. So we're finally over that hump.
Mm-hmm. So let's get started here, Vanessa. Something that when you mentioned this last week, I was pretty interested in this. The Food Truck Association, of which I think I knew about them, but I don't know much about them. So I'm interested to see this report.
Yeah, so I attended an event hosted by the Latino Food Truck Association, which is newly formed after more than 10 food trucks and vehicles were towed about 2 weeks ago in North Philadelphia. When these trucks were towed, they were also fined and it caused damage to the commissaries. So it caused a lot of problems. It took several days for the food truck owners to get their vehicles back, and they had to lay people off in the meantime. And because people were not able to operate their business, it caused them to not be able to make payments. Again, when the commissary is destroyed, that's like the kitchen, the cooking area. That makes it really difficult for people to be able to cook their food. So it caused a lot of problems. One of the biggest issues is that when this ordinance went into effect, it was mainly targeted at the businesses located along the Kensington corridor. And these food trucks are located throughout North Philadelphia and District 7, which are not along the corridor. And the change in the curfew was not communicated to them. And this is especially important because there's a long history of the city not communicating directly with food truck owners when they change their regulations and the requirements. There's permitting and zoning information that they need to know. And so there was before a Philadelphia Food Truck Association. They have re-emerged because of this problem. And this new Latino Food Truck Association is formed. And they are working together to be able to communicate directly with the city when all of these changes occur, and also to advocate for business owners to be able to have better access to different streets, where food trucks are not allowed to park, and also to loosen up some of the restrictions. When I went to this event, I talked to the president of the Latino Food Association, and he was able to explain to me what was going on. Now, I want to add a development, which is in the video, he mentions that they've been working with council member Ketsi Lasada, and that they had planned to have a meeting with the food truck owners to get them legally compliant, to make sure they had all of the paperwork necessary so that if there was a public health inspection, or if they were not complying with the regulations, that all of their paperwork would be in good order. Now, members of the association and also other food truck owners went to that meeting last week. And then when I looked at video footage that was on their Instagram, it showed council member Lasada kicking them out of the meeting. And so that has caused a lot of concern among the food truck owners and members of this association, who are not permitted to be in what was now being called a private meeting. Now, some of the people who were there on behalf of organizations said that they were attending the meeting for members who couldn't attend, and they wanted to pass on the information. but Councilmember Lozada wasn't having any of it, and she still forced them to leave. And so they found themselves outside of her council offices in Kensington, live streaming and being very upset that as they tried to forge a partnership, there was somehow some kind of breakdown in communication. So I have a video here as a short interview with the head of the Food Truck Association, and he can share a little bit of information about what was going on, like why they decided to form and what they plan on doing. So let me see if I can bring this up in just a moment. In the meantime, they're hoping that no more businesses will get towed, and that there will be better communication between them and the city. Let me see if this is the video. Oh, hold on. Okay, here it is. If we can change the view on this so that I can share the video, that would be awesome.
Okay, my name is Damaso, last name Rodriguez. I'm the co-founder of Latino Food Truck Association. We have created Latino Food Truck Association based and a lot of Latinos is going through some changes in the system they be affecting because of that. And we also helping them to correct any violation or any problem they have. So we're here for them. And we also representing the people that only want to come over here and work and do an honest living.
So recently there was an ordinance passed that implemented a curfew, and last week some food trucks were towed. Can you tell us a little bit about how that has impacted some of the members of your community?
Yes, some of our members got impact on that because they work and some of those people need to get a loan to get their trucks. They was not notified that they was gonna have their vehicles being towed for any reasons. So they be affecting not them, but even the person that work with them, they gotta support their family.
And did some of them have fines, and what happened with when their trucks were not available for them?
Some of the people they got fined because they was working to 12 o'clock based on the rule and the legalization they have on the permits. But they got a new regulation. They say they had to be closed at 11, so they be getting tickets. And then also when they had tickets for the whole 2 weeks, they came and towed their vehicles without notice, so that affected a lot.
And a lot of these folks can't afford to get those types of tickets.
No, they cannot afford it, based that I said earlier. Some of those people asked for a loan so they can purchase their vehicle, and they had to pay them. They also had to pay their workers, and they got to buy commissary so they can make their living. Most of the commissary got destroyed. They got damaged. They cannot sell those foods. Also, they got to fire some of those people because they cannot pay them. So there's a lot of families that's getting hurt because of that.
And so what do you hope to accomplish now that you have formed this association and this partnership with the Philly Food Truck Association?
What we're trying to do is just show the city that we Latino, we're not the problem, we're the solution, because we came to this city just to make it better. And the only thing we're doing is making an honest living. So we didn't come over here to do no damage.
So this idea that this ordinance is helping prevent crime, do you think that there has been crime or anything associated with the food vendors or have the trucks?
No, we being attacked, and like I always say, we're not the point, we're not the problem, we are the solution for the problem, because we bring in jobs to the people so they can support their family. We're not doing no criminal work.
And can you tell us about the growing Hispanic population and this economic opportunity that might bring to the city?
Yes, it's like the Spanish community is bringing a lot of work for the city, and also we're gonna have the FIFA in 2026, so that's gonna bring a lot of jobs to the people. Basically, we're gonna have a lot of people coming to our city, and that is an opportunity for jobs for a lot of people.
And what do you hope will be the outcome of your negotiations with city council members, and you doing this like public showing of solidarity?
What we're trying to do is work with the city so we can unite our problems. They on the top, and we're trying to talk to them. They can see down and see us trying to go to a level where we can show them the city need us like we need the city. So if we combine those two together, we can make the city just grow, because that's the purpose for everybody.
You said earlier that there wasn't communication directly with the food truck members. Is that something that you would like to see change? And would you like to see more information in Spanish?
Yes, that's what we're trying to reach out. So we're trying to explain to them that they gotta notify us anyway, even Spanish, English, but we prefer it so we can have a Spanish representative. So our Spanish community can understand exactly what's going on, because a lot of them, the presentation they have is in English, and sometimes they tell our people don't understand and don't know exactly what's going on.
So you guys hope to be a bridge for that?
Yes.
All right, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
We are Latino Food Truck Association, and then we're here to support our people. We're not here to make problems. We're not the problem. We are the solution. And we're trying to work together with the city to make a solution. And they can recognize Philly, not just for Kensington. They can recognize Philly as our food division. So thank you guys. I hope y'all come to Philly. And when y'all come to Philly, don't forget to stop out on one of the food trucks. Have a blessed one.
And where can people find you on Instagram?
They can find it at Latino Food Truck Association. Y'all can go through Latino Food Truck Association.com, and y'all can find us there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Have a blessed one.
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate. It seems like they're trying to make a good effort to negotiate and work together, get everybody informed about the new regulations. And yet it doesn't really make sense that you would physically remove organizations working with immigrants, people who are bilingual, who are able to translate the information and give it to the owners so that fewer people can be towed, and doing all of that while immigrant communities are under attack with all of these ICE raids, right? And all of the fear that exists in this community. It is just really unbelievable and unfortunate that they're having to experience this. So I am going to follow up with them to find out what they're going to do, since they have, we're kicked out of the meeting. But as a journalist, I find it concerning when elected officials have quote unquote community meetings that they widely advertise on social media and ask people like us to spread the word. And then people turn out and then they switch course and say it's a private meeting and remove people from being able to get the information to share it with community members. That's definitely a concern that I've observed.
Well, I guess my question is, how new are these regulations? Were they ever circulated to anyone? Or was it just, you come out one day, you're doing your job, and the next thing you know, there's a parking authority tow truck waiting for your truck?
Yeah, they didn't know that the regulations had changed. Nobody had emailed them. Nobody had given out flyers. There was no communication with food truck owners at all. And of course, one of the barriers is that a lot of information provided by the city is in English, but no information, whether it was in English or Spanish, was provided to these folks. So they were totally surprised and caught off guard when the city showed up and towed their vehicles. And I think it, again, in talking to the president of the Philly Food Truck Association, this isn't an isolated event. There's a long history of the city not being able to communicate with the hundreds of food truck owners that are across the city. That being said, if you want to communicate with them, you probably shouldn't remove them from your meetings.
That's right.
That would help.
We've been Vanessa, you've been bringing a lot of stories in about where that's sort of a subplot, that people have been kicked out of meetings, or meetings have been taken over, or something or other that wasn't the intention, which I am finding more and more concerning as we, with the backdrop of what we have going on in Washington. It's not a good look.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like as journalists, we're concerned about everything related to free speech, right? Access to open meetings, access to records, and not just our own press freedom, but everyone else's right to access information and to be able to hold government to account when it comes to transparency. And so, unfortunately, we're not just seeing these things limited at the federal level. We're seeing a lot of these things being limited at the local level as well. And so I think we need to continue to remind people about our First Amendment rights and the Sunshine Laws, and that we do have the right and freedom to be able to attend open meetings. And as Denise mentioned before, this might result in a lawsuit, right? If people's rights continue to be violated. So we'll see. I want to go to our next story because I know we have an action-packed show, right? And another story that I've been following on the Hall Monitor for the last year and a half is the story of a young Puerto Rican man named Eddie Irizarry, who was killed by police back in July of 2023. He was killed by a police officer, Mark Dial, who initially was charged with first-degree murder. Those charges were later reduced because of, something happening at the DA's office, not turning over the, evidence presented by an expert witness. And so those charges then were reduced to second-degree murder. The trial was delayed. It is finally underway this week. Closing arguments ended today. And the family of the victim and Mark Dial are anxiously awaiting the verdict. And so I was at the Criminal Justice Center at a protest that was organized by the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and members of Eddie Irizarry's family were there on their way to court. There was lots of media there. Of course, Hall Monitor was on the scene. And in talking to one of the other reporters who's also been covering this, shout out to my friend Isabel Sanchez, who also has been covering this from day one. And she was able to tell me that there was a lot of focus on the incredible amount of fear that Mark Dial had. That the defense was really emphasizing that he feared for his life when he saw Eddie Irizarry in his vehicle, with the windows up, mind you. The public heard testimony from his partner today where he talked about how he screamed knife twice, and Mark Dial testified that he heard gun, and that's why he reacted. So in this case, there's clear video evidence, right? So they have stipulated that Mark Dial did in fact shoot Eddie Irizarry. The question is, was it within his right as a police officer to do so, defending himself for fear of his life? Or did he act callously and recklessly when he shot up Eddie Irizarry's vehicle within 6 seconds of encountering him? One of the other things that's notable is, again, this video footage of both the body cam footage and surveillance footage from one of the homes was showed repeatedly in court, is that, Mark Dial did not stop to administer aid at any moment. He did not apply pressure to the wound. He did not try to stop the bleeding. He did not try to administer CPR. He dragged Eddie Irizarry out of the vehicle and into his car. And then from the very inception that they encountered, leadership from the Philadelphia police, officers or, police union, they fabricated a story. And I think that's an important element, that, there was an intent of deception from the very beginning. Of course, Mark Dial and his partner were found to have fabricated the story after the surveillance footage was shown. They originally had said that Eddie Irizarry got out of his vehicle and lunged at them with a knife. That, of course, was not true, as Eddie Irizarry never left his vehicle and stayed in his car. And the only crime or violation that they accused him of, which again was never really proven, is that he went the wrong way on a one-way street. And that is why they pulled him over and had this whole confrontation. So I talked with one of the protesters there, Justin Roig. And so, yeah, if we can bring up that video and take a listen to his reaction, being there and wanting to hold Officer Dial accountable. Here.
My name is Justin Roig. I am here in solidarity with the Irizarry family for the unjustified murder of their son.
You helped organize a protest after this first happened. Tell us about that.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
You helped organize with the community to protest to get justice for Eddie when it first happened. Can you tell us about that effort?
Well, I wasn't really part of the organizing of that, Vanessa. I don't know if I can really speak to that. I was there.
You came out to protest.
I did come out to protest. I mean, it was a bit of a watershed moment, I think, for Latinos and Puerto Ricans in the city as a reminder that we are still targets of police brutality, that even as you see more Hispanic police officers, even if you see more Black police officers, you see more of the so-called progress we were supposed to get from the rebellions in 2020 to 2021, that we are still being murdered in this city for nothing. Since then, there has been greater mistrust, not just in the police, but also in our institutions and leaders, some of which we've been around for years, institutions that have been around for decades, that after the first protest, we didn't see organizations like Concilio or APM or any of these organizations here today, despite Eddie Irizarry being a Philly Rican, being a Puerto Rican man, being shot in a neighborhood with some of the highest concentrations of Puerto Ricans in a census tract in the country. And we don't see leaders in our community here. We are seeing people from the neighborhood. We're seeing organizations like PSL here. But there's since that first rally, there has been a great absence of leaders from our community.
How confident are you that the trial will result in accountability?
No faith. I have no faith or trust in the system to hold Eddie accountable, or hold Mark Dial accountable for Eddie's murder. And even if, say, we get a somewhat decent deal with the context of we don't really get those, that doesn't bring him back. He should be alive with his family right now, with his cousins, with his parents, with his grandparents. He should be allowed the opportunity to continue to live his life, to develop as a person, to get to have all the triumphs and losses that you get. That's part of living life, and that opportunity was robbed from him when Mark Dial shot him 6 times in cold blood.
What would you like to see happen today?
What I would like to see happen today is that Mark Dial is held to the same standard that anyone that commits murder in this city is held to. If I or someone else goes and shoots someone 6 times, we're probably going away for a long time. But if I wear a blue button-down shirt with a badge, I don't even have to sit in a jail cell for more than a few days, because the FOP or whoever will pay my bail, and I get to walk free.
And what's your message to Eddie's family?
To Eddie Irizarry's family, my message comes as a person who, whilst I haven't been what they have been through, I know what it's like to lose a family member in an unjust way and then have the courts minimize that and let that person off easy. It's an injustice. It re-traumatizes you. So with my deepest sympathy and solidarity and love to them.
Thank you so much. All right, the jury is currently deliberating as we speak. So hopefully next week we can provide an update to the story. And yeah, I will keep reporting on it, and hopefully we will find out soon what the fate of Officer Dial is.
All right. Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for 2 stories this week that we're going to be following and keeping an eye on for people in the future. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week, right?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Vanessa. Now, Denise, tell us what we're going to see next.
Okay. Hall Monitor is a media partner with an organization that is putting on the Hope Symposium. What the Hope Symposium does is take a look at gun violence in children and how we can move the needle toward prevention and giving children alternatives in the best way possible. I'm going to be moderating a panel on how the media covers gun violence with several people who are in the media here locally that do that, and it's going to be um, an interesting set of sessions that you can bring your kids to. They're not going to be, long and boring and have a whole bunch of people, speaking academic-ese or anything like that. And we'll have details on how you can register to participate in the Hope Symposium at the Hall Monitor newsletter. So here is my interview with the organizers of the Hope Symposium. And we did this last week. You're listening to Philadelphia Hall Monitor on WPPM 106.5. I'm Denise Clay-Murray, and I'm here with Javi Alvarado, who is the executive director of, and I'm sorry, I know I'm going to get this wrong.
Intercultural Family Services.
Intercultural Family Services. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
But and we're talking about a day-long symposium that Philadelphia Hall Monitor is a media partner of, that's going to look at the issue of gun violence in young people. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Denise. Thanks for having us.
So I guess my first question is, tell me a little bit about your organization and what it does and how you all got the idea to do this.
Yeah, sure. So Intercultural Family Services is a nonprofit here in Philadelphia. We are a human service agency established in 79 rather. Originally, Intercultural Family Services was a refugee immigration center. And that has evolved over the years into a comprehensive human service agency. We work to strengthen our families, unite our families, individuals in very diverse communities with a range of culturally relevant programs and services. We have a number of programs to include mental health outpatient programs, intensive clinical programs for kids with significant behavioral issues. But we also provide a number of wellness prevention programs like housing counseling for first-time home buyers, gun violence prevention, which we'll be talking about today, which primarily works with youngsters, anywhere between the ages of 12 and 20. And then we have parenting education programs, and I think I mentioned the housing counseling programs as well.
Okay. Now, we're also joined by Coley Baker, who is the development director of your organization. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Chaley.
Chaley. I'm sorry. I knew I was going to mess that up.
No, it's okay.
All right. Well, I guess my next question is, what are you seeing in terms of gun violence in youth? Because in order to have a program that's focused specifically on youth, there had to be something that you saw that made you say, wait a minute, we've got to talk about this. What are you seeing?
Sure. So I think you'll read about it in the paper. All the headlines talk about the decline in overall gun violence here in Philadelphia. I think the last number I saw with homicides had dropped by 36% in 24 compared to 2023. And as I understand it, reaching some of the lowest levels in a decade. And the shootings have decreased as well by a significant percentage. But what we do see, and I think we talked about this at the beginning of the program, is that that we're grappling with, Philadelphia continues to grapple with gun violence, particularly amongst our youth population. So while overall shootings and homicides have declined significantly, young people remain disproportionately affected. Intercultural focuses on these young people. We work with children, provide some case management, provide assemblies at the local high schools and middle schools to talk to kids about gun violence, about making the right choice, also about some of the root causes that we believe impact gun violence. And that's challenging sometimes because a lot of these children have so many other challenges in their life. They may be experiencing all sorts of poverty. They may experience some food insecurity, housing insecurities. They are growing up, some of these children, in some violent neighborhoods where violence is an everyday occurrence. And we see that a lot of these kids also have challenges regulating their emotions. And so our program is really focused on helping children with their self-esteem, with their life skills, and helping understand what gets them to the point where they may become involved in violence, in any kind of violence.
So the symposium, can you talk a little bit about that and what you're hoping people get out of that day-long program?
Absolutely. So the upcoming symposium, Hope Symposium on Gun Violence Prevention, is scheduled for June 11th at Temple University. Our goal is to foster meaningful partnerships and bring together a really diverse group of folks from the community, diverse voices from across disciplines, to confront the crisis of youth gun violence in Philadelphia. So it's our belief that by convening experts in education, healthcare, public health, law enforcement, social work, grassroots organizations like ours, mental health, that we seek to really spark a cross-sector dialogue, align our efforts, and develop actionable, community-informed strategies. Really, at its core, the goal is to break down the silos that we often see and create a unified response that reflects the complexity of the issue and the shared responsibility to protect our youth. Really important for us is that the recommendations and solutions that are generated at the symposium through the convening will not only remain theoretical, but we hope to walk these recommendations and solutions directly to the mayor's office and city council to garner broader institutional support, and most critically, to drive real and immediate action. So the symposium, it's not just a conversation, it really is a catalyst for change.
Now, what kind of things are you going to be talking about? Like, I understand that media and the things, the impact of the media is one of the many sessions that's going on. But what are some of the other sessions? Is there going to be a keynote speaker?
Sure, I'll let Chaley take that one. Chaley.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have, there's a lot of different ways that you can participate. And as Javi mentioned, we have not only the breakout sessions in the morning, but we also have breakout sessions in the afternoon, and in the morning we have a panel discussion. The panel discussion, as Javi mentioned, is really bringing together those different voices to talk about the issue as it exists right now. What are you seeing in the hospitals? What are you seeing in the community level? And then we'll have a fireside chat over lunch, where we'll have the commissioner and the DA sit down and talk about what is really happening in the city and what is the strategy. And the afternoon breakout sessions, as you mentioned, we have 5 different ones. The media one is focused not just on how gun violence is reported, but also the way it's reported, how it impacts families. Oftentimes, families don't hear about an incident if they're not there until they hear it on the media, or until media or someone knocks on their door. So how are we talking about gun violence in ways that are impacting the community and also shedding a more positive light? We have hope and healing, which is really the transformative power. We have a faith perspective as well as a clinical therapist that will be there to talk about trauma responses. We know that gun violence produces trauma not just for the family members of the individual impacted, but for the community at large. So that will be that part of the discussion. We have a youth in focus, which will have some young people there to actually participate, and some community leaders that work with kids on the ground to talk about what issues are important to them and how these things can be addressed with their issues, and how their voice matters in solving the problem. We also have a policing and perspective, which really dives more deeply into what is the police's role, what is their strategy, and how does that come together to impact communities. So with all of the different breakout sessions, we really want to hone in on some of the various aspects that we have that we can talk about, and how it impacts the families that we serve and people in the community. These are all areas that Intercultural Family Services is working in when we talk about the social determinants of health and the ways that these things impact children and youth. And for us, these are all reflective, not that we provide and what we're seeing in families, whether it's parenting or whether it's kids dealing with truancy prevention, but also across all the other organizations that we're trying to partner with.
Okay, so in the end, what are you hoping people take away? Is there going to be like, because a few years ago, the city council did, Councilman Curtis Jones did something similar. It was like a day-long thing, and the result of that was the blueprint for a safer Philadelphia. What is the end goal here for people to be able to take away that you would like people to have?
I can answer that briefly, and I think Javi can really expound on it. One of the things that really Javi's focus has been is really providing tools and resources. So we plan on having people involved in each of the breakout sessions to take notes of what the actual feedback is about those topics, and bring out 2 to 3 suggestions from each action items from each of those breakout sessions, in addition to the morning panel discussion and the afternoon where we're going to have legislators. We want to know how people like kids like our kids that are in the peer to you program, that's a peer mentoring program, what can not only their children have and have resources, but how can their families come together and have the resources. So we want to have an action plan for neighborhoods that we can have resources shared more broadly across organizations, plug people into resources in the city so that we can address the issue holistically and try and present this to the mayor's office and to the commissioner, and really create a strategy that it fits well with the city strategy moving forward. We know there was a plan before, but right now we want to have one that we can contribute to with all these voices of moving us forward into the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really important that, while we've seen a decrease, that we understand that progress is always not permanence, right? So we do have to keep an eye on the gun violence, especially in our youth population. And I think the city can take several proactive steps to address and reduce gun violence by really tackling its root causes. One of the things that I think of right away is that there's a number of frontline community organizations out there doing the hard work, and they're responsible for some of the decreases that we see in gun violence. So increasing the funding for community-based organizations is going to be very important, critical. Supporting local community organizations that focus on violence prevention, mentorship, conflict resolution. All of that is going to be very important that we continue to support that. Crisis intervention services and de-escalation training, I think, is important. And that's something that the city can help fund and guide and shepherd along the way. Bringing in experts to teach communication and mediation skills. We talked about media earlier, and it's really interesting how the digital world, how kids are so caught up in the digital world, and how social media often impacts gun violence. We see on social media how it's very combustible, and you have children who immediately express how they're feeling or thoughts about another group of kids or other persons, and how that itself takes form and often leads to violence. So we're hoping that youth during this symposium are able to share more about how they use social media and how we could, as community providers and others, utilize social media to quell some of this violence and calm some of the situations that we often see, some of these conversations that go back and forth on social media.
Okay. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, Hall Monitor is a media partner for the symposium, and I'm going to be leading one of the breakout sessions, specifically on media. So I'm looking forward.
All right, looks like we had a little bit of a technical difficulty there. We will get the rest of that on our website.
To err is human. To really screw things up, you need technology.
Yes, that is true. So now let's bring on Lance Haber, our consumer reporter, to talk a little bit more about SEPTA and where we are right now with this. This situation keeps evolving, in my opinion.
I wonder, and I'll wait till Lance comes on to ask him. There was a op-ed in the Daily News today from one of the Republican legislators that's going to be trying to figure out SEPTA, suggesting that we privatize part of it.
That's never worked anywhere with anything, especially something this big. There's no merit to that discussion at all, in my opinion. So let's see if we can bring on Lance Haber here. I don't know. We're having some kind of technical difficulty here, Denise.
The gremlins have decided to come to Hall Monitor and hang out.
Okay. Our producer's computer just completely went offline, is what I'm being told. So I don't know that we have control over anything at the moment. So that's unusual. So what I'd like to do here, Denise, because we're really good at rolling with the issues, is something we wanted to talk about anyway. There was an election yesterday.
At least that's what we were told.
And the results are what I expected. The turnout, however, did not break 15%.
14.6 to be exact.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can't say it was because of the weather, because it was beautiful out.
Perfect.
You can't say that it was because, people couldn't access vote by mail boxes or their polls or anything like that.
You know how to do that now, yeah.
Because there weren't a whole lot of the kinds of glitches that sometimes happen on election day.
Mm-mm.
And you even can't say that the city commissioners weren't out there trying to get people to come to the polls, because I spoke to Omar Sabir, the chair of the city commissioners, on Friday at Council President Johnson's interfaith breakfast. And he said, we're trying to get people out. He also said that there might be some election fatigue because you have folks that still remember the 2024 elections and trying to get them out and mobilized to vote has been hard. And the fact that you had a 14.6% turnout, which is low even for the DA primary,
Well,
I just don't get it.
And you can make the argument that since the first election, almost 12 years ago now, this was, at least on paper, the most competitive race that DA Krasner was going to have. And it didn't work out that way, and I didn't really think it would, but you would think people would come out for that, and nobody cared.
Right. I mean, especially the people who complain the most about how Krasner runs the office. In fact, you had the Republicans who are not fielding a candidate of their own start a write-in ballot movement for Judge Patrick Dugan, Krasner's opponent, who he beat yesterday. Now, Dugan says that he is not willing to run as a Republican, that he's not interested in doing that. But if they meet the 1,000 write-in vote threshold to put him on the ballot as a Republican, then that's going to be interesting to see what happens.
But this is another one of those things where if people were really opposed to Larry Krasner, regardless of how you feel about him, right? You would think that there would be more of an organized, opposition to him, and there is not. It's just people saying.
The key word in the sentence is organized.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing to it. So, what I am most concerned about, though, is that turnout. I quite frankly thought we had bad turnout for a presidential election in 2024.
We did.
I was shocked at how bad that was, and this was much worse than I even expected. For traditionally, this election, the one after the presidential, is the lowest turnout election. This was embarrassing how bad this was, and it's not. It's not just the city commissioners. It's not just the Democratic Party. It's everybody. Everybody's got to figure out a way to get more people to come out to vote, because it's crucial, especially now. So, Denise, I think our gremlins have been subdued, and now we're going to bring on Lance Haber.
Hi, good evening.
How are you?
When I went to vote, there was nobody there. I voted in a place that shares 3 divisions, and they were like getting ready to play badminton between the tables.
Oh, wow.
Right. But maybe we can run the SEPTA video.
Okay.
And show people a little bit of what was happening. So this was from the hearings on Monday and Tuesday, and an interview with the acting general manager. And whenever we can get that up and going, that'll be great.
Representative Cephas coming. Doherty. Mary Jo Daly. Yes. Thank you all for being here. Many of whom have come. All of whom came in on the train, on regional rail, by SEPTA to get here. I'm now honored to pass it to an extraordinary advocate for.
So fighting day in and day out to make sure we fully fund SEPTA. Now, I do want to give credit to the Philadelphia delegation, because this past Friday, they attempted to bring Senate Republicans to the city. Not they attempted, they brought Senate Republicans.
My name is Connor Deschmaker. I am the statewide campaign manager for Transit for All PA. We are a group organizing for fully funded public transportation in all 67 counties.
Additional comments may be submitted via the methods noted by Mr. Johansson. If anyone would like to pose direct questions to the witnesses, there are forms at the sign-in table that may be used for that purpose. Please provide your contact information on the form so that SEPTA staff can timely respond by the end of the public comment period. Then we will start
public transit in southeastern Pennsylvania. That moment is now. Our new fiscal year starts July 1st, and if there is no state funding solution in place, we will have no choice but to move forward with a plan that will trigger the beginning of the dismantlement of SEPTA. In fiscal year 2026, SEPTA faces a structural operating budget deficit of $213 million. To close the shortfall, we are proposing a budget that will result in a 45% service reduction in the coming year, coupled with a 21.5% fare increase and reductions in our workforce. Service reductions would begin August 24th, when we would eliminate 32 bus routes and reduce frequency across our network, including regional rail and metro lines. The fare increase would go into effect on September 1st. Then starting January 1st, 2026, an additional 18 bus routes would be cut, bringing the total to 50. 5 regional rail lines would be suspended. The Broad Ridge Spur would be abandoned. 2 trolley routes would be converted to
remaining
bus.
service experienced a greatly diminished system, overcrowded buses and trains with customers regularly being passed up. Those that abandon the transit system and choose to drive will experience gridlocked roads. The 9 p.m. curfew will significantly impact the nighttime economy, including patrons at sporting events and entertainment venues, as well as hospitality and healthcare workers. Service cuts will impact almost 70 schools and education institutions, resulting in an estimated 55,000 students who lose access to reliable transportation, plus the impact on faculty and facility support staff. The elimination of bus routes and service reductions impact SEPTA paratransit, so that some customers who use SEPTA's access paratransit service will no longer be within an area covered by SEPTA. Approximately 40,000 trips per year will need to shift from SEPTA access to county providers. The cost of a single paratransit trip will increase by $1.50 per trip, and customers will experience longer wait and travel time.
Totals $345.2 million, a 3.5% reduction from fiscal year 2025. This revenue proposal covers 21% of budgeted expenses and represents the net effect of a combined 29% fare increase, the 7.5% increase implemented in December 2024, plus the additional 21.5% increase proposed in this budget. The additional revenue from these fare increases is offset by forecasted ridership and revenue losses associated with the proposed service cuts described by Ms. Holton. SEPTA recognizes that fare evasion.
Residential buildings. Who are they building them for? Who wants to move into an apartment in a city that's about to descend into chaos? I moved to Philly in 2021, and I chose the house that I chose because it was on the Paoli-Thorndale line and the 10 trolley line. And now they're talking about taking these things away. I've lived in other big cities, Washington, D.C., New York, Boston, Lisbon, and I have never heard of cuts like this.
I've used SEPTA waiting to speak. I realized since I was a child how much I've used public transportation in high school to get to a part-time job. Then when I went to Temple University, Broad Street line, and today as an elder, I'm here to speak as an elder for my community and for myself, how important it is.
Transit organizer for Fifth Square Advocacy. I am here today to talk about the proposed budget cuts and fare increases. Philadelphia is too big of a city for this to occur when it comes to reducing, shortening most routes while eliminating other routes. Putting a 9 p.m. curfew on the regional rail and SEPTA metro routes is even more embarrassing for Philadelphia. For example, if a baseball or basketball game at the sports complex in South Philly has a 7 or 7:30 start, riders who are fans would have to leave at 8:30 to catch the last train so they wouldn't be stranded. How does that make any sense? The fans who take the beeline to the sports complex have one of the highest riderships in all of SEPTA, and putting a curfew would be impacted negatively. I have a couple of stories about how commuters are making an impact on public.
This entire continent, from Mexico to Canada, West Coast and back. I've seen a lot of cities. What we have here is not only essential to the economy. I mean, hearing Mr. Sauer talk about what's going to happen to this region, should we not fund it, is terrifying, truly. I mean, it's a tragedy. But not only is it essential, this is an enviable system. I have lived here for a number of years now. We have a lot of people come visit us from my home state of Ohio. And every time they come here, we ride SEPTA, and they are just so impressed by the ease with which you can move about this city. They want something like this in their cities, and I hear that a lot, and I see that in my own travels.
My name is Lance Haver. To provide my testimony, I need answers to questions, as the law says I have a right to. So my first question is, in the budget proposal, does SEPTA project ending this fiscal year with a surplus?
Mr. Haber, I understand that you've submitted questions I believe they've been answered by SEPTA, and they're part of the record and for my review. So I appreciate your questions. You have 1 minute and 30 seconds. I would rather you provide testimony here today.
Again, it is impossible to provide testimony without having information. All you're asking me to do is complain. I don't believe that is what the law thinks of as a hearing. I have submitted questions. I have gotten some answers. Those answers raise other questions. That is what I'm asking for. There are a number of financial questions that should be asked before anybody thinks about what SEPTA is doing. And one of the questions is, did SEPTA project ending the year with a surplus last year?
Mr. Graber, you're welcome to provide additional questions to SEPTA at the sign-in. There's forms for that purpose.
That is not a sufficient answer, and here is why. Every answer may or may not lead to another question. Second, the answers do not come.
You have 40 seconds.
The answers do not come in a timely fashion. You have closed the record before I will get the answers and be able to get the information. You are violating the state law, and you are stopping people from asking realistic questions. Why are you only drawing down $113 million from the stabilization fund when you are sitting on $325 million in cash? Where did the other $200 million goes? These are questions that have to be answered before I can decide whether this is a reasonable proposal. You're interrupting me.
Listen. Your time is up. I'll give you 30 seconds to give a substantive statement. If you're not going to do that, then you have to leave.
Again, I cannot give a substantive statement without having facts. Facts are what are important. I make my opinions based on facts.
Okay.
You are stopping questions from being answered. Even your opening statement, you don't quote the law. The law says reasonable questions and answers.
I appreciate that. Your time is up. Can we go to speaker number?
I'm not going to be.
Your time is up.
Stuff.
Okay.
Come on, get your stuff.
I just want to go on the record. I just. Come on, sir.
No, he did not drag him out.
For lawmakers to understand just exactly what's happening here and to ask more questions. And I think we did that all day Friday.
Well, the Republican leader in the House wants to privatize bus service. He's been talking about it publicly. I think he wrote an op-ed yesterday at the Inquirer. What do you think of that idea? Why doesn't that work in your view?
Well, I mean, we were born of bankrupt private transportation providers. SEPTA was formed from that. I think that there has been that we've made efforts to privatize those portions of our service that make the most sense to us financially. We've done that with our paratransit service, for example. We're looking at it with some of our staff functions, like our medical department, for example. So we are looking for ways to get, and privatization is just one way to cut on costs or reduce costs. So we're open to all sorts of ideas, and I'm interested to hear what Representative Topper might have more to say on that. But it's not something we've considered up to this point.
You just don't think it'll work?
Well, I'm not sure if it'll work. I would have to question. They cite an example out in Denver. Denver RTD has privatized portions of their bus service.
Seem to struggle.
It does appear to struggle. It's the costs are low, but for a long time they were using non-union labor. They were doing also. But Denver seems to be happy with them back. You all are well aware of the struggles we've had trying to fill bus operators. That happened because just for a very brief time at the start of COVID, we stopped hiring and stopped training to the levels that we had been doing prior to COVID. What that did is it unraveled all the progress we had made to keep our bus operator levels.
So we only have 2 minutes. I just want our viewers to know almost everything that was said by SEPTA at the hearing is factually untrue. Last year, they came up with a budget projecting on getting more state money. This year, they decided that's not their strategy. Their strategy is to come up with a budget that tells the Republicans in Harrisburg that SEPTA is willing to cut 40% of the service and raise fares by 21%. Once they do that, as you heard, the service will go away, and then the people who want to privatize and give Uber the 4-bus, the bus that runs up and down Broad Street, which does make money, the right to do it, they will do that. It is, I'm already balding, but I am pulling out my hair listening to SEPTA say things that aren't true to violate the law to not allow people to get answers to questions. And here's the final question. If you have a $200 million deficit and you have $300 million in the bank, why don't you spend the money and keep the system operating? And the hearing examiner, as people saw, wouldn't let me ask that question and get an answer.
Yep. All right. Well, Lance, thank you so much for that. We're going to talk more about that in the coming weeks. Denise, thank you. And Vanessa, thank you wherever you are. And we'll see you next week on Hall Monitor.